I see. Oh no, Mr. Bill. I often say that when I'm exhausted. What happens when I get onto the stage and declare, I'm Mother Mary Ruth? I have such a good time. Geraldine Page first missed a Broadway performance in June 1987. That same evening, her son found more than just her corpse in her flat. Coded messages that dug up a sinister Hollywood plot that went back 30 years. Despite her political leanings, Page had been placed on the blacklist due to a much more personal matter. When she finally broke her silence and explained what had happened, her voice quivered. It was as if she had contemplated giving up acting altogether. Geraldine Page came into this world in Kirksville, Missouri on November 22, 1924. Edna Pearl Mays Page maintained a steady and warm home while her father, Dr. Leon Elwin Page, was an osteopathic doctor. With a population of under 8,000, Kirksville was a quite tiny town back then. Its medical school was more famous than its star-studded alumni. Still, Geraldine's formative years were marked by discipline, modest ambition, and firm family principles, even in that peaceful setting. Although the Great Depression affected everyone in their vicinity, the Page family remained relatively unscathed. Geraldine carried with her a blend of resilience and optimism from her time in the little village. During her 5th year, her family uprooted and relocated to Chicago in 1929. Everything shifted after that transfer. Geraldine suddenly found herself in the midst of a massive, chaotic metropolis teeming with art, music, and people from all over the world, far removed from the tranquility of Kirksville. The Great Depression was a problem for Chicago as well. However, it brimmed with vitality as well. The Page family resided in the emerging arts district in working-class Englewood. The universe expanded significantly for Geraldine. The sights of bustling streets, museums, and theaters inspired her to dream bigger. An acting career wasn't initially on the radar. As a child, Geraldine dreamed of being an artist or musician. She practiced the piano for hours till her fingers hurt. Whenever she wasn't performing music, she meticulously recorded watercolors and drawings. She was supported by her parents. They thought her artistic and musical talents would serve her well in whatever she did. Those formative years spent on the piano and painting gave her the self-control and persistence she'd need for an acting career. Without realizing it at the time, those lessons would pave the way for her to become a legendary actor. At 17, she had her first taste of the performing world. A little stage at Englewood Methodist Church welcomed her in 1941 when she took the stage for a play titled Excuse My Dust. The part was minor. Geraldine experienced an emotion she had never felt before that night, even if the performance was not famous. The enthusiasm of the crowd, the rush of the stage, and the impact of narrative storytelling captivated her like no other form of art or music had before. She had her acting career decided then and there. A new dream had been bestowed upon her by that little church stage. She was a 1942 Englewood High School graduate. Geraldine had been actively involved in the school's illustrious arts and academic programs. Theatrically, musically, and artistically, she was quite active. Even her professors thought she had big dreams outside the Midwest. Geraldine clung to her aspirations despite the globe being at war and life being unpredictable. She planned to move to New York and perform on Broadway. Geraldine dove headfirst into summer stock theater after school. Acting in little theaters across the Midwest from 1945 to 1950 was her specialty. It was laborious, unappreciated labor. She was the lead in 3 separate plays at once for a few weeks. The theaters were frequently in disrepair and scorching in the summer and frigid in the spring. Day after day, she practiced and carried out in the dark with little time for rest or food. Still, her abilities started to show. Even though her name wasn't prominently included on the playbills, critics in Chicago began to take note of her. She was both tested and strengthened by those years. Geraldine sacrificed her soul for menial occupations just to get by. She was a hat checker at seedy nightclubs, an usher, a sales clerk, and even a lingerie model, which was considered as disgraceful for this century. She worked her hands to the bone in industries. She gained a profound appreciation for hardship and the will to persevere through these employment. She would later incorporate that insight into her performances, making her characters more believable. Geraldine courageously relocated to New York City in 1950. Not much was in her possession other than her travel bag and a stack of audition rejection letters. There was a lot of competition in the city, and it was stressful and congested. She shared apartments with other aspiring performers, endured repeated rejection, and lived in tight conditions. Nevertheless, she preserved each letter of rejection as a symbol of her unwavering resolve. When everyone else doubted her, she continued to trust in herself. She attended New York University and trained under legendary masters Lee Strasberg and Uta Hagen. Following her heart was what Uta Hagen instilled in her. Lee Strasberg taught her to tap into her inner strength for every performance. Her craft was shaped by these instructors. Geraldine Page took the stage in 1952 in Greenwich Village's Square Theatre, where she performed in A Little Circle. In Summer and Smoke, written by Tennessee Williams, she portrayed Elma Weinmiller. The fact that the play had closed after only 102 performances on Broadway 4 years prior made this moment all the more memorable. Something mystical transpired, though, when Page made an appearance in it. Audiences and critics alike were taken aback by her emotionally raw performance. The 356 performances that the show played were a record for off-Broadway productions at the time. Her name became synonymous with a new era in American theater, and many praised her performance as magical. This was about more than just myself. It was a stepping stone towards the off-Broadway trend, which allowed for more experimental and serious plays to be staged outside of the typical Broadway venues. She won more than simply plaudits. Her performance changed the course of history. Geraldine Page made history when she won the New York Drama Critics Award for an off-Broadway show, making her the first actor to do so. Real theater could only be found on Broadway back then. As a haven for amateurs, off-Broadway was despised. Off-Broadway was previously unrecognized, but Page's win changed that. Amazing works of art began to emerge from nowhere. May occur. Overnight, this victory transformed Page's life. Producer Charles K. Feldman and her inked a 7-year film deal. Even more crucially, it paved the way for other performers and shows to get recognition outside of Broadway. Page first appeared on Broadway in January 1953 in Vina Del Mar's Midsummer. In and of itself, the play bombed. People forgot about it after a short while. The standout performance, though, was Page's. Her portrayal of the innocent and optimistic protagonist Lily was well received by critics. The New Yorker's Walcott Gibbs praised her performance, saying that the part would have been too much for anyone else to handle, and that she embodied the most heroic women of my generation's theater roles. Despite the play's failure, Page's brilliance was evident. With her debut, she began a career spanning over 30 years on Broadway, during which she garnered 4 Tony nominations, and her star continued to rise. While her success on stage was meteoric, her dreams of starring in films were shattered. Geraldine Page should have been a Hollywood superstar after making her Oscar-nominated debut in 1953's Hondo. But her name ended up on the blacklist. That had nothing to do with her words or actions, but rather with her time spent studying under Uta Hagen. Thought she, too, ought to have become a Hollywood star. Politics and fear, not a lack of aptitude, were the reasons she was demoted from that position. Page was 37 years old when she made her cinematic debut in 1961's Summer and Smoke. she had lost the parts that could have cemented her place in film history. Despite losing the time she should have spent establishing her film career, her talent, determination, and passion for acting remained unwavering. Geraldine Page shocked the Broadway world in 1959. In Sweet Bird of Youth, when she had a spectacular performance as Princess Cosmonopoulos. Elliott Kazan directed the play, which was written by Tennessee Williams. Its debut at the Martin Beck Theater on March 10 was a smashing success. With 375 performances, it lasted for more than a year. Back then, that was a major win for an unproven move. Page won her first Tony Award nomination for Best Actress for her compelling portrayal of the struggling Hollywood star. Her detractors lauded her really moving and honest performance. Page was the one who really stunned audiences, though the play did receive 3 Tony nominations. Legend has it that she had legendary chemistry with her co-star Paul Newman. Their on-stage chemistry is still talked about. Page reprised her role in the 1962 film adaptation of the play, in addition to her Golden Globe and Oscar nominations, showing that she was a top performer when it came to giving life to the characters created by Tennessee Williams. The hidden source of inspiration was what gave her Princess Cosmonopoulos life. Norma Talmadge, a legendary silent film star of the 1910s and 1920s, was Page's inspiration for the role. With an annual salary of $1 million, Talmadge was one of the most famous people in her day. However, her career took a nosedive once sound was in cinema. Hello, Page admired Talmadge for being vulnerable and kind-hearted. In her mind, these characteristics were crucial for conveying the tragic story of the princess. Page provided the princess devastating candor by drawing on Talmadge's ascent and demise. Her performance served as a sobering reminder of how transient celebrity is and how vulnerable its seekers are. One of the most seminal collaborations in American theater history was Page's with Tennessee Williams. It all began in 1952, when she reprised her role as Alma Wine Miller in Summer and Smoke. Reviewers took note of that performance. She received an Academy Award nomination for her work in the film adaptation. Among the actresses he had worked with, Williams praised her for being the most disciplined and committed. Between the years 1959 and 1963, he consistently cast Page as the most troubled and damaged female characters. Her portrayals of women were complex, revealing their need, remorse, and emotional scars. Because of his complete faith in her, Williams sought her counsel on his characters. Their chemistry elicited performances unlike any seen on American theater before. Page took a risk with Rip Torn, her future husband, in the early 1960s. It was she who established the Stock Theater Repertory Company. Outside of Chicago, close to Lake Zurich, they put it up. It was more than simply placing. While performing, establishing a safe space where performers could be themselves while still accomplishing important goals was key. They were in charge of the business for 4 years. Page put in countless hours, chipping in her own money as necessary and juggling a number of tasks to ensure everything ran smoothly. Young actors were given opportunities to study and excel by the group. Page was able to explore various roles and develop her directing skills as a result. The adventure deepened her friendship with Tor and demonstrated their shared conviction in the transformative power of theater. Geraldine Page's private life rivaled the drama of her stage performances. She wed the renowned violinist Alexander Schneider in 1954, at the age of 29, when he was 45 years old. Many in New York's artistic community took note of the 16-year age difference. Schneider had previously endured a great deal, including overcoming childhood tetanus and rising to prominence as a member of the Budapest String Quartet. Tarrytown was the site of their May 13th wedding. They were married in New York, but it was short-lived. Their divorce came just 3 years later, in 1957. Rumors circulated that their hectic creative schedules may have collided, but nobody knew the whole truth. The beginning of Page's tumultuous love life was that brief marriage. Even more people would be curious about her second marriage. Geraldine would actor Rip tour in Panel, Arizona on September 8, 1963. So they could avoid attention, they picked that secluded area. They began dating in 1959, while they were both performing in Sweet Bird of Youth on Broadway. The 1962 film adaptation captured that connection on screen. Their romance became all the rage in the theater industry, despite Tor being 6 years Page's junior. They co-founded the Sanctuary Theater Workshop and lived together beyond their time on stage. Angelica Page, one of their 3 children, continued her mother's career. Symbolic of their passionate relationship, the doorbell of their New York home read, "Torn Page," which was both amusing and appropriate. Despite the many challenges they faced as a married couple, they remained so until Page passed away in 1987. Fractures began to appear in the early 1980s. Amy Wright, a 19-year younger actress, had begun an affair with Rip Torr. In 1976, while he was playing Hamlet and Wright was playing Oilia in an off-Broadway production of the play, they met. He quickly began to divide his time between Amy and Geraldine. It was public knowledge. Although each had their own unique motivations, Wright ultimately conceded that the 2 women were jealous. However, Page was adamant about not divorcing Torr. A child was born to Torr and Wright in 1983. But Page was unwavering. When the reporter inquired about it, she firmly stated, "Of course, Rip and I are still married. We've been married for years. We're staying married. What's the big fuss?" Her stubbornness shocked many, who pondered whether her motivation was pride, a desire for stability, or a combination of the two. Regardless, she remained steadfast, and the marriage remained intact until its inevitable demise. In 1977, one of the most peculiar things happened. Page and Wright shared the stage in a play called The Stronger, which was directed by Torr, and was about 2 women engaged in a silent argument. The atmosphere backstage was electric, and Wright expressed later on that Page had only done it for Torr's sake. The production was a real-life drama, and both women suffered through it. Their jealousy added fuel to every scene. Playing out in front of an audience, Page's unwavering commitment to her work remained unbroken, despite the public exposure of her private suffering. Geraldine Page, from 1953 to 1984, amassed one of the most extraordinary and tragic records in Hollywood, earning 7 Oscar nominations without winning a single one. The streak began with Hondo in 1953 and continued with Summer and Smoke in 1961, Sweet Bird of Youth in 1962, and so on. Throughout her career, from 1960's SIX's You're a Big Boy to 1972's Pete and Tilly, 1978's Interiors, and 1984's The Pope of Greenwich Village. Each role showcased her diverse talent. She portrayed delicate characters like Alma Wine Miller in Summer and Smoke, fiery ones like Alexandra Delago in Sweet Bird of Youth, and profoundly troubled souls like Eve in Interiors. Despite the acclaim and respect she received from critics and peers, the Oscar continued to go to her, slipping through her fingers. When she received that 7th nomination, the conversation in Hollywood revolved around her losing streak. At that point, she had surpassed Deborah Kerr and Thelma Ritter, who had both received 6 nominations without winning. Geraldine became the first woman in Oscar history to reach 7 nominations without a victory. The media went into overdrive comparing her to the soap star Susan Lucci, who was known for losing awards year after year. The spotlight was on Geraldine, and it appeared as though everyone was curious as to how long her unfortunate streak would continue. Geraldine even made light of it, joked about it, and told People magazine before the 1985 Oscars that if she lost again, she would be the champion of losing. She smiled, but the weight of the situation was evident. What the public didn't always perceive, though, was the extent to which Geraldine believed in her own work. Years later, she confessed that secretly she thought, "If you don't tell anybody, I thought I should have won every time," she stated, implying that she should have won every time. "I am most devoted to you." What kept her going through the headlines and the pain was the calm belief of an artist who gave her everything to her roles. She kept pushing herself, took on hard parts, and delivered performances that people still remember. It wasn't arrogance. Nowadays, during those years, the press was unkind, repeatedly calling her the biggest Oscar loser in headline after headline. When someone else's name was called on Oscar night, the cameras would linger on her face. Articles, TV specials, and montages would mention her streak, sometimes with sympathy, but often with a tone of mockery. Each nomination brought hope, but also the danger of further public shame. At the age of 61, she received her 8th nomination for her portrayal of Carrie Watts in The Trip to Bountiful. The part showcased her acting abilities. Carrie was an elderly woman who longed for a final visit to her childhood home. Geraldine brought such sincerity and feeling to the role that critics and viewers were profoundly affected. Her initial nomination had occurred a long time ago. F. Murray Abraham made the 1986 Oscars memorable when he presented the Golden Globe for Hondo, which meant that she had waited more than 30 years for her chance. Many thought it was long overdue. Winning at that age was a win over Hollywood's discriminatory treatment of older women. It was about more than just skill. As Geraldine made her way to the stage, Abraham bowed low to her as if she were royalty. It was an unprecedented sight at the Oscars, but his words and the announcement left the audience in awe. He went on to call Geraldine the greatest actress in the English language. He immortalized that moment in Oscar history with his gesture. Upon hearing her name, the entire audience rose to their feet in an unprecedented standing ovation. People cheered, clapped, and even shed a few tears. This wasn't courteous applause. It was a tribute to her remarkable career and the years she had endured. The applause continued long after the orchestra's music had faded, but nobody seemed to care. It was obvious that this night belonged to Geraldine Page. Standing at the podium, she was visibly nervous. Her voice quivered. She clutched her Oscar firmly and attempted to choke back her tears as she thanked Horton Foote, who had written The Trip to Bountiful, and the Mirror Repertory Company, in whose creation she had participated. Her words were genuine and unrehearsed. She spoke about the difficulty of staying in the acting industry and the significance of her friends and family's support. History was made as she concluded her performance. The audience went wild, rising to their feet once more. The energy in the room was electric, as if they were honoring her entire life's work rather than a mere performance. Geraldine Page's triumph became one of the most moving and talked about moments in Oscar history, enriching the evening even more. In the spring of 1987, Geraldine Page was dazzling on Broadway, playing the role of Madame Arati in Blythe's Spirit at the Neil Simon Theatre, which opened on March 31, 1987. Geraldine stole the show with her powerful performance, which earned her a Tony Award nomination for Best Actress, her final nomination, and the show's 104 performances, which became the talk of the town. The timing of her win, her first Oscar the year before, added to the specialness of the occasion. The cast included Richard Chamberlain, Blee Danner, and Judith Ivey. Even though the entire cast was solid, it was Geraldine's presence that kept people coming back. Then, on June 13, 1987, the shock that no one saw coming, Geraldine did not show up for either the matinee or evening performance, but she brought unmatched energy to the stage every night. Her portrayal of the eccentric medium was hilarious, sharp, and unforgettable. Audiences laughed and felt. Her son, Anthony Torr, went to her lower Manhattan apartment to see how she was doing and discovered her death at the young age of 62 from what appeared to be a heart attack. Word of her passing quickly circulated around Broadway. A memorial service was held at the Neil Simon Theater, the very spot where she had delivered so many outstanding performances. Her passing was a loss for the entire theater world, not only for her family. What made her death so painful was that she was still in her prime, and her castmates learned of this the very next evening during a prearranged gathering. The police had confirmed that her death was due to natural causes, but the abruptness of the whole thing left her friends, colleagues, and fans devastated. Her victory speech was humorous and honest. She joked, saying, "If you don't tell anybody, I thought I should have won every time." After 7 nominations, she finally won the Oscar in 1986 for the trip to Bountiful. I am most devoted to you. It was only a year after her success that her life was abruptly ended. She passed away just 6 days following the 1987 Tony Awards. Nevertheless, Geraldine continued performing with the same intensity and determination that had defined her career right up until the end. Her untimely demise served as a poignant reminder of the unpredictability of life and the immense devotion she had shown to her art right up until the end. Little did anyone know that in her last months, Geraldine had been battling serious health issues, including kidney disease and high blood pressure, which she had steadfastly concealed from the public eye. Only those closest to her were privy to this truth. She continued to perform night after night in a role that required both physical stamina and emotional depth, unaffected by the toll it was taking on her body. Her extraordinary devotion was on full display, and the revelation of the truth about her illness only served to heighten the impact of her last performances.